My husband asked for a divorce and laughed in my face until the judge revealed my net worth. I am Sofia, 29 years old, sitting in this courtroom watching my 6-year marriage crumble as my husband laughs while signing our divorce papers. Miguel always thought I was just a naive small-town girl with no real ambitions. Little did he know that while he was cheating on me with his coworker, I was building an empire right under his nose. The judge is about to read my financial statement, and I can't wait to see that arrogant smile vanish from his face. Before I tell you how my soon-to-be ex-husband's expression changed completely, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to defend yourself when no one believed you could. I was a small-town girl from Tennessee who moved to Nashville to study accounting at Vanderbilt University. I had big dreams of working in corporate finance despite my humble background. My parents always taught me the value of hard work and saving money, lessons that would turn out to be priceless years later. I met Miguel at a cafe near campus. I was there studying for a financial analysis exam when he approached my table. He was a third-year law student from a traditional Nashville family of lawyers and radiated that kind of confidence that only comes from never having worried about money, not even for a single day in his life. "You have potential. You just need the right guidance," were his first words to me, with an extended accounting textbook on the table. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Now I realize it was as much an insult as a preview of our entire relationship. He seemed perfect, ambitious, charming, successful, and apparently interested in me despite my modest background. Our romance was whirlwind. Miguel took me to restaurants I could never afford, weekend trips to Gatlinburg, and introduced me to a lifestyle I'd only seen in movies. But from the very beginning, he was constantly improving my tastes and social circle. He criticized my Target clothes, suggested I cut my hair more stylishly, and made subtle remarks about my friends at university having a limited worldview. I earned a modest income working part-time as an accounting assistant at a small firm. I loved my job, the analytical challenges and the satisfaction of seeing numbers fit perfectly. Miguel, however, called it my little job, and often suggested I didn't even need to work. "Why exhaust yourself for pennies when I can give you everything you need?" he'd say, not understanding that my career was about more than money. It was my identity and independence. After 18 months of dating, he proposed during a romantic weekend in Gatlinburg. The ring was dazzling, the champagne expensive, and the moment perfectly staged for maximum impact. Several people in the restaurant even applauded. It felt like a fairy tale, and I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was an intimate ceremony in Savannah, Georgia. My choice despite pressure from his family for something bigger in Nashville. Looking back, I realize that was one of the few times I managed to stand my ground against the expectations of the Hernandez family. At least the location was respectable, even if simple. His mother commented with a tense smile that didn't reach her eyes. That was my first real taste of how his family saw me, as someone not good enough for their son. After our honeymoon in the Caribbean, we moved into his house in Belle Med, one of Nashville's most exclusive neighborhoods. Everything was elegant, expensive, and cold, very much like his family. I tried to add personal touches, photos, colorful art, plants, but Miguel preferred a minimalist aesthetic that showcased wealth rather than our personality as a couple. The first signs of trouble appeared within months. Miguel questioned every decor choice I made, criticized my choice of friends, and made subtle remarks about my career. "Accounting is so common," he once said after meeting some of my colleagues. "You have the potential to be exceptional, but you're wasting it doing bookkeeping for companies no one knows." I tried to fit into his social circle. The wives of other lawyers and executives who spent their days shopping at Spazando or attending charity events were friendly enough in person, but I never felt truly accepted. I overheard one of them at dinner refer to me as Miguel's experiment with the middle class. Instead of defending myself, Miguel later suggested I should try harder to fit in, maybe update my wardrobe or take tennis lessons. "They just need to see you're making an effort to adapt to our lifestyle," he explained, as if my identity were something to be molded and fixed. Those early years were a confusing mix of luxury and loneliness. being showered with expensive gifts while feeling my self-esteem diminish. Slowly, I was becoming what Miguel wanted, a trophy wife who reflected well on him, while the independent, creative woman I once was faded away. 2 years after our wedding, the tensions simmering beneath the surface started to boil over. Miguel had always been particular about our finances, but his behavior grew increasingly controlling. Despite our joint accounts, he questioned every purchase I made while lavishly spending on himself without discussion. "Did you really need another set of professional development books?" he asked, scrutinizing the credit card statement. "That's $150 that could have gone elsewhere." Meanwhile, he didn't think twice about spending thousands on a new golf membership or expensive watches. Gradually, I found myself cut off from friends and family. Visits to my parents in the small Tennessee town became less frequent because Miguel always had an excuse: work event, client dinner, or just that rural Tennessee was too provincial for my taste. My university friends stopped calling after Miguel made it clear they weren't sophisticated enough for his circle. Jessica, a friend, asked if our wine was from California. She mocked me after a dinner she organized, as if we were serving domestic wine to guests. It's embarrassing, Sofia. My career, once a source of pride, turned into a constant battleground. When I was offered a promotion to senior accountant, Miguel wasn't supportive. "Is it worth the modest pay bump for all those extra hours away from home?" he questioned. "We're planning to start a family soon, remember?" That was news to me. Whenever I mentioned having children, he always said the timing wasn't right. It was around this time I discovered my passion for financial consulting. The firm I worked for was expanding its services, and I volunteered to learn about advisory and strategic planning. I found I had a natural talent for spotting investment patterns and creating financial strategies that delivered real results. Excited about this new direction, I shared my idea of eventually starting my own boutique financial consultancy with Miguel. His response was devastating. "Be realistic, Sofia. Starting a business requires business savvy, which isn't exactly your strong suit. Plus, most small businesses fail within the first year. Why risk what we have?" Our views on money highlighted our fundamental differences. Miguel believed in conspicuous consumption, driving the right car, going to the right vacation spots, to project success. I believed in saving, investing wisely, and finding value beyond high price tags. Approaching our 3rd anniversary, Miguel's late nights at the office became the norm instead of the exception. Big clients, market analysis, quarterly reports. His excuses varied, but his absence was constant. He ate alone most nights, went to bed alone, and increasingly lived a single life, yet with the financial scrutiny of a child receiving an allowance. Our first serious fight happened after the annual Christmas family gathering. On the drive home, his mother asked pointedly when we planned to have children. I said I was ready whenever Miguel was, only for him to smoothly change the subject. When I confronted him at home, his reaction was cold. "Kids are a responsibility and a huge expense," he said, loosening his tie. "With your modest career and my family's expectations, any child of ours would need trust funds, private education, the right connections. We're not there financially yet." "We're not there yet?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Miguel, you make 6 figures. Your family has wealth that's been built for generations. What are we waiting for?" His answer was revealing. "My money isn't the problem. You haven't established yourself properly yet. What would you contribute to a child's future?" His words stung for days. His dismissive attitude toward my career, insignificant. He called my salary during another argument, solidified something inside me. I needed financial independence, not just for myself but for my sanity. That week, I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. I set up a small direct deposit from my paycheck. Not enough for Miguel to notice if he checked our joint accounts, but enough to start building something of my own. At the same time, I began educating myself about financial independence. I read books on investing, took free online courses on business management, and subscribed to newsletters on entrepreneurship. I did all this in private browsing mode, careful not to leave digital traces for Miguel to find. The woman who had once been swept away by grand gestures and expensive dinners was slowly awakening from her gilded cage, plotting her escape, one small step at a time. As Miguel continued his late nights at work, I started laying the groundwork for my independence. Using my growing savings, I registered a small business, Sofia Financial Solutions, and built a simple professional website showcasing my portfolio and services. My first challenge was finding time to work on my business without Miguel noticing. I transformed our rarely used guest room into a home office, telling Miguel I needed a dedicated space for ongoing education to improve my skills. He barely paid attention, dismissing my professional growth as a harmless ambition. As long as I didn't interfere with our social obligations, he was fine. My first client came by chance at our local cafe. I overheard Elena, a catering business owner, complaining about high quotes she'd received from financial advisors. "I can't afford $10,000 for a financial plan, but I'm losing money somewhere, and I can't figure out where," she told her partner. I introduced myself, explained my background, and offered to help for a fraction of the usual cost, with the understanding I was building my portfolio. Elena took a chance on me, and the results exceeded both our expectations. I identified inefficiencies in her cash flow, restructured her payment terms with suppliers, and created an investment strategy for her profits that increased her returns by 40% during the first quarter. The transformation was so dramatic that it led to referrals to other small business owners in her network. Working with Elena not only gave me my first success story but also a genuine friendship, something I'd been missing in Miguel's curated social circle. She was authentic, hardworking, and appreciated my skills in a way my husband never had. "You have a gift, Sofia," she told me over coffee one day. "You understand money in a way that helps real people build real wealth. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I worked late nights while Miguel was on increasingly frequent business trips. I turned our seldom-used walk-in closet into an improvised office for client calls, using blankets to muffle the sound. Each new client was both exciting and terrifying. Exciting because my business was growing, terrifying because discovery would mean confrontation. The learning curve was steep. I made mistakes, charging less for complex projects, occasionally promising too much on deadlines, but I learned fast. Each client taught me something new about running a business, setting boundaries, valuing my own expertise. I used my savings to buy essential software and certifications, carefully hiding the charges among household expenses or paying in cash. My client list steadily grew over the year, mostly through referrals and word of mouth. Instead of spending profits, I reinvested most back into the business and set aside a portion for strategic investments. Miguel remained unaware, believing my confidence was just about adjusting to our lifestyle rather than professional fulfillment. A turning point arrived when I worked with a startup founder whose financial restructuring after my advice helped her secure a large funding round. The success story was featured in Nashville's business magazine. I had to decline being named publicly, citing privacy reasons, but the credibility gained me access to bigger clients. Through Elena, I met Patricia, a serial entrepreneur who had sold her previous company for 8 figures and was launching a fintech startup. Initially hiring me for a small project, Patricia quickly became both a valuable client and a mentor. "You're charging too little for your experience," she told me frankly after reviewing my rates. "Triple your prices and see how your perceived value rises." She was right. When I increased my rates instead of losing clients, I attracted more established businesses willing to pay for quality. Patricia also introduced me to angel investing and strategic portfolio management. "Cash loses value sitting idle," she explained. "You need to make your money work for you." Under her guidance, I started making strategic investments in startups, including Patricia's new company focused on AI-powered financial planning tools. I began with small amounts, but as my business grew, so did my investment portfolio. Watching both my business and investments flourish was intoxicating. For the first time since meeting Miguel, I truly felt alive, purposeful and independent. I was building something valuable entirely on my own merits. During this period, I maintained the facade of just being Miguel's wife in social settings, nodding politely when wives discussed shopping trips and charity committees, attending his work dinners, playing the perfect understanding wife, all while running a growing business from home and making investment decisions that would change my life. My double life was exhausting but empowering. Every new client, every successful consultation, every investment return brought me closer to the freedom I craved, something I increasingly realized I needed from my controlling marriage. 4 years after our wedding, the facade started to crack. It began with a text message that appeared on Miguel's phone while he was in the shower. A visible preview on his lock screen from someone named as saying, "You miss me already." The message disappeared before I could read more, but it planted a seed of suspicion I couldn't ignore. Miguel had been more distant than usual, often arriving home smelling of unfamiliar perfume he claimed was from hugging colleagues goodbye at networking events. Instead of confronting him right away, I decided to investigate. I noticed his patterns: the late Thursday meetings that always lasted past 9, weekend conferences with no websites I could find, the sudden increase in dinners with clients at a particular upscale downtown restaurant. The following Thursday, I told Miguel I was visiting Elena to help with a special corporate event at her catering company. Instead, I parked my car near his favorite restaurant and waited. At 8:30, his BMW pulled into the lot. 10 minutes later, a red Mercedes arrived, and a blonde woman stepped out. Even from a distance, I recognized Amanda, his co-worker at the law firm. They embraced in a way colleagues never would. He kissed her in the parking lot before they went inside together. My hands trembled as I took photos with my phone, my stomach a hollow of betrayal and confirmation. I gave them 30 minutes before approaching the restaurant. They were seated at a corner table, her hand on his, leaning in intimately. I approached quietly, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear. "This explains the late nights," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Miguel leaned back, his face flickering through shock, guilt, and finally annoyance at being caught. Amanda had the decency to look embarrassed, grabbing her purse and mumbling something about needing to use the bathroom. "Sofia, this isn't what it looks like," Miguel started, using the same soft tone he used with difficult clients. "Seriously, because it looks like you're having dinner with your girlfriend while your wife thinks you're working." The conversation that followed was surreal. Miguel offered a half-hearted apology, claimed it was just physical, and had the audacity to blame me for his infidelity. "You've been so wrapped up in your little accounting projects," he said, lowering his voice as nearby diners started to notice our attention. "You've become boring, Sofia. No ambition. When was the last time you made an effort in our marriage?" I left the restaurant alone, driving aimlessly for hours before returning home. Miguel arrived past midnight, offering promises to end the affair, suggesting counseling, even proposing a second honeymoon. For reasons I didn't fully understand at the time, I pretended to consider reconciliation. "I need time," I told him, which wasn't a lie. I needed time, not to forgive him but to plan my next steps. The following weeks were a masterclass in deception on both sides. Miguel temporarily became attentive, bringing flowers, suggesting late-night dates, while I started consulting divorce lawyers during my supposed client meetings. Rebecca, a formidable divorce attorney recommended by Patricia, laid out the reality. "Tennessee is an equitable distribution state," she explained. "Without a prenuptial agreement, the court splits marital assets based on what is fair, not necessarily equal." I learned about our financial entanglements, how complicated it was to divorce someone with family wealth, and the importance of documenting everything. "Knowledge is power, especially in divorce," Rebecca said. My careful gathering of information came to an abrupt halt when Miguel discovered my browsing history on our shared computer. I'd forgotten to use private browsing for a search: Tennessee Divorce Property Division. His anger was immediate and terrifying. He cornered me in the kitchen, waving his phone with the screenshot he'd taken. "Is this what you've been doing? Planning to divorce me and take my money?" His face was red, a vein throbbing on his forehead. "Let me make this clear, Sofia. You won't get anything without me. Nothing. My family's lawyers will make sure of that. I stayed calm, which only made him angrier. I'm not planning anything, Miguel. I was just researching after what happened. Wouldn't you do the same? He seemed placated by my explanation, but the threat remained between us. That night, I moved all my important business documents to secure cloud storage and began transferring digital records to drives kept in a safe deposit box Miguel didn't know about. The final discovery arrived 3 weeks later. While organizing our closet, a task Miguel never helped with, I found a jewelry receipt inside his dress shoes. It was from Tiffany & Company, dated 2 months earlier, for a $12,000 diamond tennis bracelet. I'd never received such a gift, especially knowing about the affair. Evidence of his tangible investment in another woman hurt more than I expected. The receipt showed he'd spent our supposed money, on Amanda. Before I could process this new betrayal, I heard the front door open. Voices. Miguel and a woman laughing at our entrance. I froze in our closet as they entered our bedroom, clearly not expecting me home in the middle of the day. I stepped out to find Miguel and Amanda embracing at the foot of our bed, the bed we'd shared for 4 years. "Sofia!" Miguel exclaimed without bothering to pull away from Amanda. "You're supposed to be at work." "I took the afternoon off," I responded, stunned at my own composure. I should have called first. What followed was not the emotional confrontation movies had prepared me for. Instead, Miguel turned coldly pragmatic. "Well, this saves me from having a difficult conversation," he said, straightening his tie. "I want a divorce, Sofia. Amanda and I are planning a future together." His confidence was absolute as he outlined his terms. He would generously let me keep my personal belongings and a small settlement to help me get back on my feet. The house, our investments, even the furniture we bought together would stay his. "My lawyers will be in touch," he said, apparently confused by my lack of hysteria or begging. "You should find another place to stay starting tonight." I calmly responded, "As this is also legally my residence, I will stay. You and Amanda are welcome to find a hotel." His face darkened at my challenge, but Amanda tugged his arm. "Let's go, Miguel. We can deal with this later." As they left, Miguel turned back for a final shot. "You'll regret not taking my generous offer when my lawyers finish. You'll be lucky to get a trailer park in the worst part of Nashville." I closed the door behind them, leaned against it, and for the first time since discovering his affair, I smiled. Miguel had no idea what was coming the day after I caught Miguel and Amanda in our bedroom. He took most of his clothes and personal belongings out of the house. I changed the locks that same afternoon, a legally questionable move, but it gave me time to properly document our possessions before he could remove something valuable. Miguel's assumption about my financial naivety quickly became evident in the initial settlement offer his lawyer sent. A lump sum of $50,000 and 6 months of living expenses. In exchange, I wouldn't claim any of our other assets, including the house I had helped furnish and maintain for 4 years. "He's testing the waters," Rebecca explained when I showed her the offer. "He's banking on the fact that you don't know your rights or the full extent of your marital assets." With Rebecca's guidance, I formally rejected the proposal and began the process of financial discovery, a legal mechanism requiring both parties to disclose all assets and liabilities. Miguel's response was to delay and obfuscate at every turn. "That's a standard tactic," Rebecca assured me. "They're hoping to drain your resources and patience until you accept less than you deserve." What Miguel didn't realize was that I didn't rely solely on his disclosures. I had been meticulously tracking our joint finances for years, including accounts he thought I didn't know about. More importantly, I had my own growing resources that he was completely unaware of. After careful consideration and consulting with Rebecca, I made a strategic decision. I would temporarily withhold the true extent of my business and investments during the early negotiation phases. Tennessee law generally considers assets acquired during marriage as marital property, but Rebecca identified a potential exception. Miguel had actively discouraged my business and provided no support, financial or otherwise, in its creation. We would reveal everything at the right moment, she assured me. But for now, I would let him believe whatever story he wanted about me. As the legal process dragged on slowly, Miguel launched a social campaign. Mutual friends started avoiding my calls. Invitations to social events dried up. Even our neighbors, who had always been friendly, became distant and professional. Later, I learned that Miguel had been spreading a narrative that I had cheated on him, that I was mentally unstable, and that he was divorcing me despite his best efforts to save our marriage. In circles where his family's name carried weight, his version of events was accepted unquestioningly. The pain of this social exile was unexpectedly sharp. People I had shared holidays with, celebrated milestones, confided in, vanished from my life based on Miguel's lies. All except Elena and Patricia, who never hesitated to support me. Gossipers who don't listen to both sides aren't worth your energy, Elena told me over emergency pastries in her catering kitchen after a particularly hard day. Focus on building your new life, not mourning the old one. Miguel's attempts to intimidate me escalated once he realized I wouldn't silently accept his terms. There were late-night phone calls with veiled threats, warning me never to work in this city again, and even a suggestion that he would report my business for tax irregularities. A hollow threat, since my financial records were meticulously documented. His family joined the pressure campaign. His mother, Esperanza, called to reason with me. "We always knew you weren't the right one for Miguel," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But we accepted you because he chose you. Don't make this difficult, Sofia. Take what's being offered and carry yourself with dignity." I kept my composure throughout, something I had perfected over years of enduring subtle condescension at the Hernandez family gatherings. "Thank you for your concern, Esperanza. I will follow my lawyer's advice," I replied. Miguel's overconfidence started to turn against him. Believing he didn't have the resources to fight a prolonged legal battle, he made several critical mistakes. He failed to disclose investment accounts I had documentation for. He underreported the value of his stock portfolio. He claimed certain assets were separate property when they had been clearly purchased with marital funds. Rebecca documented each discrepancy meticulously, building a case that would eventually undermine his credibility before the court. Meanwhile, my business experienced exponential growth during the separation period. A financial restructuring plan I designed for a regional restaurant chain helped them avoid bankruptcy and triple their profits, garnering features in industry publications. I had to decline interviews citing personal reasons, but the professional recognition brought a flood of new clients. The biggest breakthrough came when I secured a contract with a national retail chain to overhaul their entire financial strategy, a six-figure deal that transformed my business from successful to exceptional. I hired 4 employees, rented a professional office space downtown Nashville, and began turning away clients whose values didn't align with my company's mission. All of this happened while Miguel and his legal team continued to portray me as a struggling bookkeeper dependent on his support. His perception of me as the naive small-town girl dazzled by his wealth had become so ingrained that he couldn't conceive of my success as independent of him. During this time, Patricia introduced me to a group of angel investors seeking to fund promising fintech startups. My combination of practical financial experience and technological vision impressed them enough to offer seed funding for a revolutionary financial planning app one had been developing. The app, which used AI to provide personalized financial advice for small businesses and individuals, launched in beta with overwhelming positive feedback. Within 6 months, we had 50,000 users and were receiving acquisition offers from major financial institutions. I also made strategic investments in several other startups, leveraging my network and financial expertise to identify companies with exceptional growth potential. My portfolio diversified across technology, real estate, and emerging markets, carefully managed to maximize returns and minimize risk. The night before our final court date, I sat alone in the house that had never truly felt like home, reflecting on my journey. 4 years earlier, I had been so eager to please Miguel that I was starting to lose myself. His betrayal, painful as it was, had forced me to rediscover my strength, ambition, and courage. I packed a small travel bag. Regardless of what the judge decided, I had decided I wouldn't spend another night in the space where my marriage had fallen apart. My new penthouse apartment was ready, purchased through an LLC that Miguel didn't know about, furnished with pieces I chose for their beauty and comfort rather than status value. As I zipped up the bag, my phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. "Remember who you are tomorrow, not who he tried to make you be." With those words in my heart, I prepared myself to face the final act of my marriage with Miguel. The morning of our court date was clear and crisp. I dressed in a navy blue suit, conservative but confident, with a single piece of jewelry, a small diamond pendant Elena and Patricia had given me to mark my business's second anniversary. "Your diamond of independence," they called it. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, as Rebecca had advised. Miguel was already there, looking sharp in a tailored charcoal gray suit. His lawyer, David, stood beside him. David was a senior partner at one of Nashville's most prestigious law firms, known for aggressive divorce settlements favoring wealthy clients. Miguel grinned smugly when he saw me, leaning in to whisper something to David that made both men laugh. His confidence was palpable, convinced this was just a formality before his inevitable victory. Rebecca arrived moments later, impeccable in a burgundy suit that contrasted sharply with the dull tones of the courthouse. Unlike David, with his team of junior associates, Rebecca worked with precision and purpose, radiating a quiet competence that had reassured me from our first meeting. "Ready?" she asked, her expression unreadable to outside eyes. "More than ever," I replied. The judge's courtroom, presided over by Judge Catherine Williams, was imposing in its austerity. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing eyes, had a reputation for fairness but little patience for theatrics. When proceedings began, Miguel put on an Oscar-worthy act. His testimony painted him as a devoted husband who supported his wife's modest career ambitions, only to be repaid with ingratitude and unreasonable demands in the divorce. "I just want a fair resolution, Your Honor," he said, his voice modulated to sound disappointed. "I've offered Mrs. Sofia a generous settlement that allows her to maintain a comfortable lifestyle while she rebuilds her career." David presented his case for dividing assets, emphasizing Miguel's family wealth as separate property, minimizing my contributions to the marital estate, and suggesting the house, mainly bought with his earnings, should remain his. Throughout his presentation, I maintained my composure, neither reacting to Miguel's fabrications nor revealing my emotions. Judge Williams occasionally glanced at me, her expression inscrutable. When it was time to sign the initial divorce decree, separating our marital status, Miguel made a show of it. He signed with flourish, a chuckle escaping his lips as he capped his Mont Blanc pen. As he returned to his seat, he passed close enough to enjoy a glance back at the farm of your parents. Rebecca's approach was methodical. Her focus, a stark contrast to David's dramatic arguments, presented evidence of Miguel's financial deceptions during our marriage. The hidden accounts, the lavish spending on Amanda, the pattern of financial control. "Your Honor," Rebecca said, "Mr. Miguel has not been honest about the full scope of our marital assets, as required by Tennessee law." She submitted documentation of accounts Miguel failed to disclose, including dates, account numbers, and approximate balances. Miguel shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Rebecca continued, his smug expression giving way to nervous glances toward David. David requested a brief recess, which Judge Williams denied. "I believe we should proceed, Counselor. I am particularly interested in hearing about these undisclosed assets," she said. The courtroom atmosphere grew tense as Rebecca systematically dismantled Miguel's financial deceptions. Judge Williams's expression grew sterner as evidence accumulated. "Furthermore," Rebecca continued, "we ask the court to consider Mrs. Sofia's separate property, established during the marriage but with no contribution or support from Mr. Miguel." This was the moment we had prepared for. Judge Williams looked up from her notes. "Proceed, Counselor," she said. "Mrs. Sofia established a consulting business during the marriage. Mr. Miguel not only failed to support this enterprise but actively discouraged it and belittled her professional ambitions, as shown in these communications. Rebecca presented emails and texts where Miguel dismissed my business as a hobby and undermined my entrepreneurial goals. Judge Williams examined the documents carefully before addressing me directly for the first time. Mrs. Sofia, the court requires full financial disclosure from both parties. Have you submitted complete information about this business? Not yet, Your Honor, I responded as we had planned. My full financial declaration is ready for submission today. Rebecca handed the court clerk a sealed envelope containing my complete financial disclosure, something we had strategically withheld until this moment. I request the court review Mrs. Sofia's financial declaration before making any decisions on asset division, Rebecca said. Judge Williams nodded and opened the envelope. Silence fell as she read, raising her eyebrows slightly, the only sign of surprise, otherwise composed. After what felt like an eternity, she looked up. For the record, I will read the summary of Mrs. Sofia's assets. My heart pounded as she began reading aloud. Financial Solutions, Sofia's consulting firm established 3 years ago. Current valuation based on revenue, contracts, and intellectual property. $2 million. Miguel's portfolio of investments including stocks in technology, real estate, and startups. $1.9 million. Real estate holdings. 2 properties purchased within the last 18 months, valued at $1 million. By this point, Miguel looked physically ill. His face was drained of color, his body stiff with shock. Next to him, David whispered frantically, but Miguel seemed incapable of processing what he was hearing. Total disclosed assets, $5.2 million, Judge Williams concluded. The courtroom remained silent. Miguel looked at me as if seeing a stranger. At that moment, I felt no triumph or vindication, only a deep relief that the truth was finally on record. Judge Williams broke the silence. Mr. Miguel, do you wish to review any of your previous statements regarding Mrs. Sofia's financial dependence on you? Miguel seemed unable to speak. David quickly stood. Your Honor, we were not aware of these assets. We contend that, as they were acquired during the marriage, Mr. Miguel is entitled to an equitable share. Rebecca was prepared for this. Your Honor, we direct the court's attention to the prenuptial agreement signed by both parties before marriage, specifically Clause 15. This was our AC. When we reviewed our prenup years after signing, Rebecca discovered a clause that Miguel's own lawyers had included. Any business created by either spouse during the marriage, without the other's capital contribution, shall remain separate property in the event of divorce. The clause was likely included to protect Mr. Miguel's potential businesses, Rebecca explained. However, the language applies equally to Mrs. Sofia's business, which she built without any financial contribution from Mr. Miguel. Judge Williams examined the prenup, nodding slowly. The language is indeed clear. Mrs. Torres, please continue. Rebecca outlined how I had built my business from scratch, using my own savings and reinvesting profits, while Miguel actively discouraged my efforts. She presented testimonies from clients and mentors attesting to my independent work and business acumen. Throughout Rebecca's presentation, I watched Miguel, the man who had laughed while signing our divorce papers just hours earlier, now sitting frozen. His confident demeanor had shattered. Amanda, who had been seated in the gallery, slipped out of the courtroom, her expression unreadable. Judge Williams took 20 minutes to review all the documents before issuing her ruling. When she returned, her decision was clear, based on the evidence presented and the terms of the prenuptial agreement. Sofia's Financial Solutions Company and the resulting investment portfolio constitute her separate property, solely belonging to Mrs. Sofia. Miguel made a strangled sound, half a gasp, half a protest. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, due to Mr. Miguel's failure to fully disclose marital assets as required by Tennessee law, the court is inclined to view the division of the remaining marital assets more favorably to Mrs. Sofia. The rest of her ruling was a blur of legal language, but the outcome was clear. I would keep my business, my investments, and my properties. Additionally, I would receive a larger share of our marital assets due to Miguel's deception. The house would be sold, and the proceeds divided according to the judge's formula, heavily favoring me. As we stood to leave, Miguel approached me, his lawyer trying unsuccessfully to hold him back. "You planned this," he said, his face contorted with rage. "You planned this," he said, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "All these years, you've just been waiting for the right moment to bring me down." I looked at the man I once loved, now a stranger consumed by his own victimization narrative. "No, Miguel. I built something while you were busy destroying what we had. That's the difference between us." Rebecca gently guided me away, leaving Miguel standing alone in the courtroom, the remnants of his superiority complex crumbling all around him. Leaving that courthouse that day felt less like a victory and more like liberation. The weight of deception, both Miguel's and my necessary secret, lifted from my shoulders with every step down those marble stairs. Today, my business has expanded internationally. My investments continue to grow, and I've used my resources to establish a foundation that helps women achieve financial independence. Miguel tried to reconcile once he learned my net worth, but I had already moved far beyond the woman who once sought his approval.